The first one is specialized work sample tests. It can be numerical ability tests. It can be reading comprehension tests, clerical comparing, and checking tests, right? So all of these tests are designed just like in a pattern of, you might have attempted the TOEFL or IELTS, right? So the way you attempt those tests, so these tests for the hiring purposes are almost designed in the same way. Along with that, there are certain online tests as well. It can be like telephone pre-screening, like before the job or before the interview, you go for a telephone pre-screening test. It can be offline computer tests. Different softwares are being even for such purposes. And it can be online problem solving tests related to obviously the nature of job you're going to apply for. In addition to like the methodology of the tests, which could be online or offline, the different other types of tests includes tests of cognitive abilities. In the set of cognitive abilities, we evaluate two things: intelligence tests and aptitude tests. When you talk about intelligence tests, it says that tests of general intellectual abilities that measure a range of abilities, including memory, vocabulary, verbal fluency, or numerical ability. Okay, like you attempt different, excuse me, IQ tests. It can be like certain aptitude tests as well. And when you talk about aptitude tests, it says that tests that measure specific mental abilities such as inductive or deductive reasoning, verbal comprehension, memory, or numerical ability. So in the aptitude, we actually check your logical explanations of the things, that how much logical you are in explaining different phenomena and in dealing and managing different scenarios. How much fluent are you in your reading, writing, speaking, and listening? So these are what you call aptitude tests. Okay, so there can be intelligence tests, there can be aptitude tests as well. Tests of motor abilities is the next type we have, and in that context, tests are tests that measure motor abilities such as finger dexterity, manual dexterity, and reaction time. So they are basically linked with your reflex actions, that how much responsive you are to the physical stimulus, and how quick you move, how much stamina you have. And when you obviously talk about a stamina thing, it is more linked with the physical abilities. So tests that measure static strength, dynamic strength, body coordination, and stamina. So these are all things which can be tested. And again, all the tests should be in accordance with the nature of job you're going to announce. And obviously, we have to make all these tests reliable and valid as well. Now, another very major set of tests are related to personality tests. Okay, even in Pakistan and even in local organizations, we have got a couple of HR departments who have developed very good inventory of different tests, and those tests also include certain personality tests as well. So in the personality tests, it says tests that are projective techniques, tests that use projective techniques and trait inventories to measure basic aspects of an applicant's personality, such as introversion, stability, motivation. So there are so many aspects of personality which could be measured. There are certain disadvantages associated with personality tests. And the first disadvantage we have is that the personality tests, particularly the projective type, are the most difficult tests to evaluate and use. Okay, because it would be very hard to predict a personality, particularly when there are so many emotions and moods, external circumstances, which are continuously impacting the people's thought processes, mind abilities, personality aspects, and likewise. But the basic advantage we're going to get out of the personality tests, number one, tests that have been used successfully in the past to predict dysfunctional job behaviors and identify successful candidates for overseas assignments. So at least we could have an idea out of those test scores that who is more suitable for the job. And obviously we can also understand that we cannot say that 100% prediction or 100% reliability is available for those particular tests. When we talk about personality assessments, there are many tests available. Some few important tests I have placed in our today's session. The first test we're going to talk about is Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, commonly known as MBTI. Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, it says a personality test that taps 4 characteristics and classifies people into one of 16 personality types. Okay, so those 4 set of characteristics which MBTI's indicator has picked, they include number 1, extroverted or introverted, and it would be denoted with E and I. Sensing or intuitive, denoted by S and N. Thinking or versus feeling, denoted by T and F. And judging or perceiving, known as P or J. Right? So these are the 4 categories with which we are going to find out the personality of the people around us. Okay, we can use different even softwares to assess our personality to find out that in which category of these 4 trait sets we actually lie. Okay, a little explanation more about this MBTI test. When we talk about extroverted versus introverted, it means that extroverts are outgoing, sociable, or assertive, and introverts are quiet or shy. So these are 2 contrasting aspects of personality, first of all, for which we have to think that either the person is extrovert or the person is introvert. The second category is sensing and intuitive. The sensing would mean that sensitive types are practical and prefer to focus on details, whereas intuitive rely on unconscious processes and look at the big picture. Okay, so these are 2 different phenomena in personalities. Either the people are sensing or the people are intuitive. Then we can look at the combination of thinking and feeling, thinking versus feeling. So when we talk about thinking, thinking types use reason and logic to handle problems, whereas feeling types rely on their personal values and emotions. When we look at the judging or perceiving, it says that judging types want control and prefer their world to be ordered and structured, whereas perceiving types are flexible and spontaneous. Okay, so we have developed different combinations, and we see that out of these 4 sets of different combinations, anyone's personality is associated with which type of these factors. There is another very famous personality test known as Big 5. Okay, so when we look at the Big 5 model of personality dimensions, it includes 5 basic dimensions. The first one is extroversion, which includes sociable, gregarious, and assertive. Then it can talk about agreeableness, which means good-natured, cooperative, and trusting. We can also discuss conscientiousness, which means responsible, dependable, persistent, or organized. When we talk about emotional stability, it includes that person is calm, self-confident, secure under stress, which is positive trait, versus nervous, depressed, and insecure under stress, which is a negative aspect of emotional stability. Then there can be openness to experience, which means that person is very curious, imaginative, artistic, and sensitive. Okay, so out of these 5 dimensions, we analyze different personalities and find out their score related to extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, emotional stability, and openness to experience. Okay, now what is its application in the job? For that particular factor, I have collected a research evidence for you. We have just gone through the Big 5 traits, And now out of that research, out of certain research, let's see that how these 5 traits are associated with the job and how these 5 traits are associated with one another when we talk about personalities. In the earlier classes, we discussed an HR outcome, and that HR outcome was in the form of productivity, satisfaction, absenteeism, turnover, organizational citizenship behavior. So these were the HR outcomes, right? So out of those HR outcomes, we have picked one outcome, which is absenteeism. And when we focus upon absenteeism related to jobs, the research shows that extroversion is positively related to absenteeism. Now, extroversion is positively related to absenteeism would mean that the person who is having a higher score of extroversion would be showing more absenteeism, right? And the second phenomena, that conscientiousness is negatively related to absenteeism. And if the score of conscientiousness is high, the person would be less absent. Okay. Now, these are the evidences. These are the factors which help us to determine that who is the right person for the right job at the right time. Okay. The third factor related to absenteeism was found that no differences found between racial groups, and thus less adverse impact when using for selection processes compared to cognitive ability tests. Okay. Now let's see agreeableness. It says needed for jobs requiring teamwork and good interpersonal facilitation skills. This means that the people with higher level of agreeableness, whose test score is high related to agreeableness, these are the people who will be having good interpersonal facilitation skills. However, at the same time, the people who are having higher levels of agreeableness, however, negatively related to career satisfaction. Now again, it's a very interesting result which we have found related to agreeableness. Now, when we talk about extroversion, it says related to positive effectivity and interpersonal facilitation. But when we look at extroversion, the person who is having the higher score related to extroversion, it says that positively related to salary levels, promotions, and career satisfaction. Okay, so different personality types, different personality scores are giving us different evidences that what and how and where the person will be performing differently. Now, as the conscientiousness in our earlier heading of absenteeism, which was negatively related to absenteeism, we thought that conscientiousness is a good thing. Let me show you the conscientiousness example once again. The conscientiousness would mean responsible, dependable, persistent, and organized. But there is a dark side of conscientiousness as well. Now, what can be the dark side of conscientiousness? It says that not helpful for jobs that require creativity, innovation, spontaneity, or quick decision making, which would also be termed as analysis paralysis. Okay, now that analysis paralysis is taken up as the dark side to conscientiousness. All right. Now, openness to experience, that is another phenomena. Let's see that how openness experience is having the research evidence related to the job. It says needed for jobs requiring innovation, creativity, and spontaneity. If we design a job which actually includes the requirement of innovation, creativity, and spontaneity, so we better hire the person with higher levels of openness to experience. At the same time, it says that may be predictive of cross-cultural sensitivity and success in international assignments, but negatively related to salary levels obtained. Okay, so we have just seen that sometimes one personality aspect is positively related with the job contents, and one personality at the same time, the same personality aspect might be related with some negative correlation with some other job context. When we talk about emotional stability or neuroticism, it says that related to negative affectivity, it is related with cope poorly with stress, and negatively related to career satisfaction. So again, different outcomes, different results are coming up related to personality assessments when we talk about different job related factors. Now, whenever we conduct personality tests, there are certain problems associated with it. The first problem which is being identified by your author is that the people must give reliable and truthful answers. Because supposedly in any personality assessment test, if you are not telling truth, so your test scores can never predict your true personality. So that is a very tricky phenomena related to the personality assessments, that how can we ensure that people would not be lying during the tests. Second, people must understand the language used, because unless and until you have not picked up the question asked, how can you respond to it? Number 3, responses may be affected by mood. And number 4, people may have multiple identities across situations and find it difficult to portray their real personality. Okay, so these are the problems associated with personality measurements. Yet there are certain other tests which could always be conducted in our quest for finding the qualified person. The next topic we have is interest inventories. This interest inventory test is basically, or the simply called interest inventories. They are basically designed to find out the career prospects for an individual, that which particular career is more suitable for a particular individual. It says that the personal development and selection devices that compare the person's current interests with those of others now in various occupations so as to determine the preferred occupation for the individual. Okay, read this definition again with me. Personal development and selection devices. So we have come across the basic context of interest inventories. Personal development and selection devices that compare the person's current interests, that which particular career, which particular hobbies, which particular interests the person is having. And we compare those current interests and professional career aspirations with those of others now in various occupations, and we see that how much uniformity of interests is present in between the different jobs, so as to what we can get out of it, so as to determine the preferred occupation for the individual, so that we can particularly counsel a person that what particular job is more suitable for a person when the individual is having certain types of hobbies, interests and preferences. Yet there can be achievement tests, and in an achievement test it says that the test that measures what a person has already learned, which is job knowledge in areas like accounting, marketing or personal management. Okay, if you have any question you can always ask in the chat room. Now supposedly our objective is to find person job fit, right? And to find out a person job fit, there are 6 personality types, and those proposes that the fit between personality type and occupation determines satisfaction and turnover. Okay, how it would be relating these two things, I'll be telling you briefly in our discussion. Personality types, in personality type section, we have got 6 people. Can be realistic, the people can be investigative, the people can be social, the people can be conventional, the people can be enterprising, and there can be associated with a personality type category which are known as artistic. Okay, now to place people in these 6 categories, we have got a personality type sample occupations, and these personality types by Holland. So personality job fit theory says that the 6 personality types, realistic, imaginative, social, conventional, artistic, they are related with, for example, look at the first type of personality, which is realistic, right? In the realistic category, it says prefers physical activities that require skill, strength, and coordination. Okay, and how can we find out these things out of all? we conduct psychological tests. And out of those psychological tests, which are basically known as test inventories, we conclude that a person who is being tested is belonging to a particular category. Okay. So we are just looking at the realistic, and we'll be talking about artistic as well in a short time. When we look at realistic, the personality characteristics the people who belong to this type would have, that they would be shy, genuine, persistent, stable, conforming, and practical. And the people who are shy, genuine, persistent, stable, conforming, and practical, the sample occupations advised to them are mechanic, drill press operator, assembly line worker, farmer, and likewise. Now, as Shoaib has just asked, that what about artistic? The people who are taken up as artistic, they prefer ambiguous and unsystematic activities that allow creative expression. And if that category of people are around you, they'll be more imaginative, disorderly, idealistic, emotional, and impractical. And if such categories are being defined, the sample occupations advised for them could be that they can become painter, musician, writer, interior decorator, and so on. Likewise, if the people are investigative, investigatives prefers activities involving thinking, organizing, and understanding. And the personality characteristics could be analytical, original, curious, and independent. And the sample occupations could be biologist, economist, mathematician, news reporters. Okay. Now, supposedly the category of the personality we have found is social. So social prefers activities that involve helping, and the social would have personality characteristic of sociable, friendly, cooperative, and understanding. And the sample occupations suggested for the social people, that would be social worker, teacher, counselor, clinical psychologist. Likewise, the people who belong to conventional, the occupations can be accountant, corporate manager, bank teller, file clerk. And the person who are having enterprising personality, they can become lawyer, real estate agent, public relations specialist, small business managers, and so on. So Holland find out the personality job fit. In that context, he tried to find out that what type of personality is more suitable for what type of a job. Still, there are some other types of tests, which also includes web-based online testing. And when we talk about web-based online testing, it says that eliminates costly, inefficient paper and pencil testing processes. Okay, because online, when you conduct a test, so it would reduce and it would improve the processes more effectively. And we are basically talking about the operational cost. Okay. So online test, the second aspect of online testing would be that allows for role playing by applicants, and the different applicants sitting at far places. Use of computer-based scoring estimates eliminates rater bias, right? So biases can be overcome by online artificially intelligent systems. Provides immediate scoring and feedback of results to applicants, and can be readily customized for specific jobs. Okay, so these are the characteristics of online testing. In the context of different tests, there can be work samples as well, right? So actual job tasks are used in testing applicants' performance. Okay, so what we have to do, that we might have to design an environment which looks like the actual job, and we ask the person to operate in that particular environment for a while. If the person is able to operate positively in an artificially created environment, which is similar to the actual job scenario, so the person would also be doing good in the actual job. So that is the context of work samples. And the work sampling technique in the context of work sampling technique, it is said that a testing method based on measuring an applicant's performance on actual basic job tasks, that rather than creating artificial environment, you assess the person in actual job scenario. Now, another aspect of tests is talking about work simulation. In the work simulation, management assessment centers are being developed. A simulation in which management candidates are asked to perform realistic tasks in hypothetical situations and are scored on their performance, right? Typical simulated exercises include leaderless group discussion, management games, individual presentations, the interviews. So these are the type of simulations we can have in the management assessment centers. There can be video-based situational testing as well. And in this video-based situational testing, a situational test comprised of several video scenarios, each followed by a multiple choice question that requires the candidate to choose from among several courses of action. While the evidence is mixed, results suggest that video-based situational tests can be used for selecting employees. Okay, so we can also have certain scenarios in which video-based simulation testing is again one of the norms we can follow. In the work simulations, there can be a miniature job training and evaluation approach. And in miniature job training and evaluation approach, it says that the candidates are trained to perform a sample of the job tasks and then are evaluated on their performance. The approach assumes that the person who demonstrates that he or she can learn and perform the sample of tasks will be able to learn and perform the job itself. There are certain background investigations and reference checks we can focus upon. The extent of investigations and checks, which were generally discussed out of an industrial survey, it includes that the reference checks were 87%, background employment checks were 69%, criminal records were 61%, driving records were 56%, and the credit checks were about 35% of the time. Okay, so different organizations in different industries are basically having the investigations related to the background of the candidates who are applying for the job. Reasons for investigations and checks. The first reason we have is to verify factual information provided by the applicants. Okay, so that the false information could be eliminated. Second, to uncover damaging information, we need to have the reference checks. Sometimes background investigations and references would also include sources of information for background checks. And those sources are from where we can get the data. Those are former employers, current supervisors, commercial credit rating companies, and we can also get the references in form of written reference letters. Making background checks, when we talk about making background checks more useful, it says that include on the application form a statement, include on application form a statement for applicants to sign explicitly authorizing a background check. Use telephone references if possible. Be persistent in obtaining information. Ask open-ended questions to elicit more information from references, and use references provided by the candidate as a source for other references. Using pre-employment information services, that is the context we need to talk about. In pre-employment information services, there are certain concerns which we have to bear in mind. The concerns about checking applicant histories, it includes various equal employment laws, discourage or prohibit the use of such information in employee screening. Courts view making employment decisions based on someone's arrest record as unfairly discriminatory. We have to be very much conscious when we talk about these things. And the EEOC says a poor credit history should not by itself preclude someone from getting a job. Sometimes when we are hiring the people, there can be a polygraph or honesty test as well. The polygraph is also known as lie detector. That is a device that measures psychological changes. The assumption is that such changes reflect changes in emotional state that accompany lying. Right? This is very interesting, in fact, that it catches your lie. Employee Polygraph Protection Act is always prevalent, and you cannot expose everyone for such tests. So this particular prohibits employers in most all cases from conducting polygraph examinations of all job applicants and most employees. Also prohibited are other mechanical or electric devices, including psychological stress evaluators and voice stress analyzers. Okay, so these are the things which are available in the industry, but there are certain laws which protect the employees or the applicants not to be exposed to these technologies. Yet there can be another test which is known as paper and pencil honesty test. When we talk about paper and pencil honesty tests, it says psychological tests designed to predict job applicants' proneness to dishonesty and other forms of counterproductivity. Okay, so in these type of tests, there are certain explicitly elaborated or implicitly elaborated questions, and you have to respond to those questions. You have to write your answers, and through that, it is predicted that either you are more honest in your aptitude and attitude or not. For example, when you have to find out someone's is stealing or not, so anti-theft screening procedures are being used. Certain anti-theft screening procedures which are advised, it includes ask blunt questions, listen rather than talk, do a credit check, check all employment and personal references, use paper and pencil honesty test and psychological tests, test for drugs, establish a search and seize policy and conduct searches. So these are the parameters, these are the policy aspects we can always go for screening somebody if there is anti-theft procedure to be incorporated. Another very interesting test that is known as graphology. Graphology is basically a handwriting analysis. For example, you will be asked to write certain statements. And a very famous statement is, a quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So if you write this particular statement that a quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, you are actually writing the whole number of alphabets. Okay. So once you have written this statement, so there would be a graphology scale placed on your handwriting, and it would be calculating the angles of your writing. And through the angles of your writing and the style of your writing, your personality would be assessed. At the same time, it is said that the graphology assumes that handwriting reflects basic personality trait, and the graphology validity is highly susceptible. Right? It is highly suspect that how it could be managed. Physical examination, that is another aspect which you will be reading by your own because our session time is almost ending. And again, physical test would always be conducted in relation with the job nature. There can be substance abuse screening, in which we would see the person is not subjected to the drugs or alcohol or things like that. And obviously, we have to be careful that the people who are on drugs should not be hired. So that was all for this chapter. And that concludes our second Zoom meeting. And that is the last Zoom meeting we have for today. You can ask your questions either in the chat room or on the WhatsApp. Thank you for today.